Hey, you guys, I'm Alexandra Harbushka, founder of Life With Herpes. I'm really excited to be here with Amanda Neely. This is going to be a completely different type of interview, conversation. Let me tell you a little bit about Amanda Neely. She is a financial professional who has used her childhood upbringing, her experience with her parents, her own experience in life to create wisdom around finance and our finances. So, for you guys, if you're like, what, this is a herpes topic, we're talking about money. I'm going to get there and explain how this actually is extremely parallel and how one kind of goes into the other. But I'm really excited to have Amanda on. I was on her, I guess, live. I was on her live stream. We've kind of gone back and forth for the last couple of weeks, and I really want you guys to meet Amanda. So, Amanda, welcome to our show. Welcome to our interview. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alexandra. Nice to be here.
Yes, it's gonna be fun. So, one of the things that you guys may or may not know that prior to this Life with Herpes, I had a podcast called Sex, Money, and Food. And the reason why I chose sex, money, and food, and this is where we get to the money part here with Amanda, is I personally believe when you boil life down, if life falls into those three categories, they're all related. And if one category is off, the other two trickle. If you may have two categories off and one's like stellar, but the other ones are struggling. And so it really is a parallel. It's a direct result of our beliefs, of our emotional beliefs and things that are holding us back. So let's talk about it, Amanda. Let's talk about money. Let's talk about your limited beliefs that you said you kind of had as a child. I really am excited to hear the story about your childhood.
Yeah. So when I was born, my parents were on public assistance, and my dad was actually in his late 50s. My mom was in her mid 30s. So quite an age gap there.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't find a job. And so my mom went back to college in her late 30s to try to provide for the family. And I had no clue, of course, when I was little, I just was living life. But looking back on it, like how empowering that is, that she like took charge of the future of the family and how we would provide for ourselves. And she did that, and she actually spent a bunch of her career. She ended up working for that college that she went to. And she spent a lot of her career talking with other women who are coming back to school later in life and really, supporting them. But that kind of mentality that you can do anything and that kind of empowerment, she totally fostered in me. If I wanted to be president of the United States, I could do it. But at the same time, the way that our family lived was on very little, right? When I was doing the FAFSA for college, I realized just how little my parents had and how much they made. Their income was less than the tuition and room and board at the school that I was going to go to. Very little, in a rural, Ohio, right? Like, and I was going to school in a big city, right? But still, very little. And looking back, I realized like the only time they talked about money was when they fought about it. And there was one point in middle school when they were fighting so much that I was just like, okay, Mom, Dad's mad at you for getting into credit card debt. I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to help you get out of credit card debt. Let's pay this off, figure out how to do it together. And that way you two won't fight as much anymore. And that became, like a big turning point for them. They fought less about it, but they also still didn't talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. My dad would just manage all the money and my mom would spend with what she could with what he allowed her to, and just wasn't a thing. And but I thought I have this all figured out, right? Going into college, supporting myself, right?
I did too. Yeah, we all did.
Yeah. So the first, like that, I got a job between high school and college and saved, I like tithed and then saved almost all of what I had left with like very little spending because I was still living with my parents right that summer.
Right.
But by the time Christmas vacation rolled around, that first quarter of college, all that money was gone that I'd saved the whole summer.
Mhm.
Right. And that took me right back to exactly where my parents lived the whole time, paycheck to paycheck, trying to figure out when a bill comes due, how I'm going to pay it, how I'm going to buy my books. And that really lasted for a long time throughout my 20s. And we would try to pay off student debt, after I graduated, and never really making progress. Typical American story. And it partly was because I got married 3 weeks after graduation from college. And
wow.
And it was kind of the reverse in my relationship. My husband just gave me control of the finances. And we never talked about it. We just said, we're not going to spend very much. Right. But that's it.
This sounds extremely like the exact, so I'm going to get a little bit off. Well, I'm not off track. This is exactly what happens with couples and sex, and couples with STDs or just sexual health. When I say sex, I just mean sexual health. And like what you're saying is, you're like, I knew what to do. I went to college, I saved, I knew exactly what to do. And then I got there, and then it was either not what I expected, or things cost more, or life got ahead of me. And it was very similar to me. I taught sex ed. Like I knew what I knew. Yet the idea of a teenagers, because I was a teenager when I taught sex ed in high school, very similar to what you're saying, a teenager mindset, then you get into the real world. You're like, oh, but there's this and there's that. And I didn't know, I was just a kid, basically. I thought I knew. And these are big, big things that can completely transform the trajectory of your life and go completely different ways. Finances and, an STD completely can do this or that,
Yep. And I recently learned a really good way to think about this. A lot of what we're taught in sex education class and by the big financial gurus is what to do. They just say, you should do this, you should do that, do X, Y, or Z, do these steps, whatever. But we're not taught how. We're not taught the mindset that we need to have. We're not given the chance to role play. What do you do in a specific situation? Right. We're not like all those things. It's like we have to figure out how to translate the what into the how for our personal situation. And I don't know anybody that's doing that kind of work, except like we try to do that. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And very similar how you're saying, okay, your parents, and then you and your husband, when you first got married, there was really no talk about money. It's like, it's just here. And there's always one that's in charge, right? And it doesn't necessarily matter who's in charge, but there's one in charge and the other one just kind of does. And it's very similar to sexual health. A lot of times one person's in charge of the birth control, and the other person doesn't really, you just don't talk about it, or having that conversation with your partner about, again, getting tested. Like there's no shame in it's being responsible. I think there's like a lot of shame associated with that. Same thing talking about money. There's a lot of shame associated. Well, we shouldn't, we don't want to act like we're on a budget, or we want to keep up with the Joneses or whatever. There's a lot of shame in those things. And it's not shameful. These are the realities of life, whether you're married, whether you're single, whether whatever it is, these are conversations that need to happen for ourselves.
Yep.
And for your partner.
Yeah. And if there's one thing that I found works best in these kinds of conversations is starting with dreaming, starting with the positive, right? Looking for what are the goals? What are the bucket list items? What would we want our money to do for us if we were queens and kings of money for the day? And I could imagine having a similar sex conversation too, right? Like, what would our ideal, thing be? Because that feels a lot more liberating, a lot more freeing than trying to focus on, well, how are we going to pay off this debt? Or how are we going to cut back in this area or that area? Right.
Or it's like, oh, we can't have sex because we have or one of us has herpes, or I can't. And it's that's not the case at all. Like, and on that, like this idea of a king or queen, or people say to me like, oh, I can't have a normal sex life anymore. And I'm like, but what's normal? Like, is what we see in Hollywood, is what we think of a king and queen living like, is that really normal? Like Hollywood's made up, and we honestly have no idea how the royals live, right? If
Yeah.
they're obviously on a budget of some sort. It's very different.
Yeah.
But what's normal? Like
Right.
there's yeah.
Yeah. And if I'm going to be frank, I'd say screw normal. Normal
Yeah.
actually kind of sucks. Like the average American, struggling by living paycheck to paycheck, trying to keep up with the Joneses, the struggle is real all the time. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be
Yeah.
normal. I want to
Right.
live my best life, figure out what that looks like for me,
I
and
like
then
that.
carve my own path to make it work.
I like that. I like that.
Screw normal.
We don't know what normal is.
Yeah.
And everybody's relationship, and both are extremely taboo topics. Now, back to sex, money, and food. People talk about food. They'll talk about their diet. That's actually a very vocal, and we as a society have capitalized on that. Here, like I was just at the grocery store this morning, and it was like the 10 tips to getting your body, or like eat these foods to detox after like we capitalize on that.
Yep.
There's nothing in the supermarket that said like, here's how to get your financial dreams on track starting January 1. Or there was no, here's how to have a healthy, when I say sex life, I'm not talking some like wild swinging by the chandeliers. Like that's cool if that's your thing. I mean, having that just intimate conversation with a partner that is safe and you both feel comfortable. Like that's something that we just don't even have. And that's why a lot of STDs happen. That's why a lot of people go into debt.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. And it goes back to the how, right? People tell you what to do. Even my mom, she lives with us. I help take care of her. She gets these AARP, like mailers in the mail. And and they're always about money, because when you're retired, you're, living on a small budget, you have a fixed income, you're worried about cashing in your 401k, stuff like that. And it's so hilarious when I look at it, they're regurgitating the same advice over and over again, telling people what to do. And it's like, but you don't know the people you're writing to. You don't like there's such a diversity of retirees. Who's going to help them take this what and figure out how it applies to them, what they should, ignore, what, is the gold advice, right? That's coming. And a lot of like what we're taught with how to even talk to people or like what we should say, is like blanket information. And it takes some role playing, some practice to like figure out how do I say this for me, right? How do I start this conversation? What is my way of starting, something? And it comes back to, we have to always be applying for our specific situation, what works for us, and thinking those things through before you jump in and just do what everyone else is doing or what we've been told to do.
Yeah. Again, told to do. It's like we're told in high school or whatever that formative years are for us is save your money, get a job, save your money, pay your taxes, don't get into credit card debt. And then same thing with sexual health. It's like, don't get pregnant, right? Or don't get a girl pregnant. And that's it. But there's like no conversations around any of that. We're told how to solve it, or we're told not how to solve it. We're told the problem, but no conversation around, okay, this is actually how it really looks.
Yeah.
This is real life. Yeah. Something popped in my mind when we were talking, but now I forgot. It'll come back. Something about college and money. And I got into debt at 25, definitely into 25. We talked on your show, I got my first paycheck, here I went to college. I was under the I went to college. Like I have a bachelor's degree. Like that was that. Like, I have a bachelor's degree. I'm going to have an office that's like going to have a window. I'm not going to have a cube. Like I'm going to have a window type thing. Right. And then my paycheck there will be a comma at least. There was no comma for like months many paychecks that did not get a comma, and you're like, but I went to college. Like,
my student loan debt has a comma.
Right. Everything else has a comma, not that. And I would compare things to, look at my paycheck, and I would go, I also have this idea that, now that I have graduated and I have a job, I can go shopping, because I worked since I was able to, which was 16 in California. I had a work permit, and I always had a job. And so I was able to go buy things. But then once you realize that money that was set aside, my job was just to fill my, my fun life. Like it bought food with friends, drinks when I was 21 or 20 with a fake ID. Clothes, it did that. It didn't provide the meat and potatoes. I didn't have to pull out for car insurance. I didn't have all the things that when you get your first paycheck. I remember the career fair, they're like, you'll get 3,000 a month. I was like, whoa, like 3,000? That's so, like, oh my gosh, it's so big. And then I realized that 3,000, there's no comma in those paychecks.
Yep. Taxes at minimum.
Yeah. So again, this is like such a big awakening that how do we solve this? How do we solve those conversations for the finances, and how do we solve it for just sexual health, teaching people? And when I say sexual health, I mean reproductive health,
right.
I mean birth control, I mean being able to talk to a partner and being like, this is what I feel comfortable with, and this is what I don't feel comfortable with. And I'm sure you talk to a lot of people too, that they may get into a financial situation where they're like, I didn't know how to ask for help.
Right.
This didn't feel good to me. I just did what I thought I was supposed to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something that a lot of people are probably going to disagree with, because it's not your typical average financial professional, what they tell you to do. Typical financial professionals are going to say, invest in the stock market. Just do it. You got to get compound interest working in your favor as soon as possible. Just figure out how to make it happen. I'm going to take a very different approach. Okay. So I want you to spend some time just in like reflection, meditation, journaling, thinking through how you feel, what you want, getting really clear. Even if you're not 100% clear, getting a lot more clearer, like feeling good about, okay, here's what I want my money to do for me. Here's what reproductive health looks like for me, right? And having that kind of internal, right, within yourself. And yes, if you're more of a conversational type person, conversate about it. If you like to journal, write it down. If you need to, just sit there in silence, right? However that looks like for you.
If you pray about it, whatever. Yeah.
And then I like to do kind of for money, kind of a Marie Kondo method. You know how she goes into people's homes and has them pick up their items and see how they feel about it. I like to say, pull out your latest bank statement or your latest credit card statement, or both, and just take each item, go with, whatever that first transaction for the month was, and just hold it in your heart, hold it in your mind, see how you think and feel about it. Record a couple of thoughts there. See if it sparks joy for you. And just notice, right? And then go on to the next line, however long it takes. And then when you go back, you can say, well, how can I have more of the things that bring me joy? And how can I shift the things that don't really bring me joy into something that would? How can I eliminate them, or shift them, whatever that looks. And sure, people might say, well, my electric bill, that doesn't give me joy. But you have to think about not just what it is, but what it does for you, providing air conditioning or lighting, and stuff like that.
Right.
And that, of course, brings me joy.
I got a bonus and I was like, ooh, a bonus. And I'm like, I have to buy tires. And I'm like, I don't want to buy tires with my bonus. I want to buy shoes, like not tires. But you need the tires.
Yeah. And it's also joy. Joy is different than happiness, right?
Right.
The chocolate in my cupboard brings me some happiness, but does it really bring me joy, right? Is it bringing me true life and life to its fullest?
I don't know.
Right?
I got some chocolate right here.
Yes. Coffee is that for me, I have to admit.
Okay.
And then as you start to do that, you might think, well, if I really look at my 401k, if I really look at this brokerage account, which we're told not to do, but I say do the same practice with those things. And if you really feel this is not bringing me joy, this is not what I want my money to do for me, start looking for options. Start thinking who could help me, get this into more safety, and because I don't feel comfortable with this risk, or who could help me figure out exactly what these funds are doing, without, and like, not just manage it for me, but help me choose, right? And really finding that ally along the way to fill in those gaps where we don't know what we don't know, right? But we can see where there's which part we want to improve, which part we want to make an adjustment with, and then find who's going to help us make that adjustment.
I like that. And basically we can take everything you just said and combine that with sex. We can combine that with dating. We can combine that with, sexual health, with, that whole realm of, yeah, I like that. Joy and happiness. I hear so many people saying, well, like, yeah, this guy, usually females, yeah, well, this guy, he accepted it and he's okay. And I'm like, okay, like, just somebody accepting it, kind of like you're saying, is the chocolate in your cupboard happiness, or is it like, I'm like, well, I don't know, that's pretty important to me. But I get your point. Are there things that are really important to you, or does it really fulfill you and lift you up and fill you up? And that's the same thing with dating and having these conversations. And I think another good thing that's very parallel is when you are in debt and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay the electric bill this month. Like that type of, I call it the Eeyore phase. I don't know if I mentioned it to you on your show. I think I did, right? Yeah, the Eeyore phase. So like the Eeyore phase is, for those of you that have not heard the Eeyore phase, it's when as we know, Eeyore, he just walks around with a rain cloud. Like he's just, oh, well, I'm just humming along, like that type of phase. And then that phase is when you can't pay your electric bill, when you don't know how you're going to put gas in your car, when you have so much credit card debt that you go to buy something that's like $2 and your credit card is declined. Those feelings of absolute terror are the exact same feelings as, oh my gosh, I just got an STD that I will have the rest of my life. How did this happen? How did I get here? What do I do? And it's the deer in the headlights phase. And then you go into this Eeyore of like, how do I get out of it? How do I get out? Because you can get out, finances, you can actually get rid of debt. You can move through life and be debt free. There are some STDs you cannot, right? But there are ways to live through it and be like, it's not even an issue in my life. And it's the same formula, I think, to get out of Eeyore. Nothing wrong with Eeyore, but he's a cute little character. But let's get out of that Eeyore phase.
Yeah. And there's always, at least for me, there's always areas in my life that are a little bit Eeyore. Or there's times like where I'll feel like I just need to sit in my Eeyore for a little bit, right? And that's totally cool too. The thing I like about coming back to the goals, to the hopes, to the dreams, even if they feel very unrealistic, is that, at least for me, that's kind of like a like rope that I can hang on to and kind of pulls me up out of that, almost despair type things or the hopelessness, and start to kind of look around and realize I could figure this out. There is probably a way. And I need to remember like that other people have hopes and dreams too. And there's been people in the past, or there's been people that I can listen to on podcasts that have done amazing things. If they can do it, so can I.
So can I. Exactly. We can get ourselves out of it. There are ways to do it. I like what you kind of said too, which was, I think, could be good for all of us going forward. My friend and I, we made like a 2022 like just vision planning, and it was it was more like just girlfriends talking and like, what are we going to do this year? That's super cool. Now that doesn't get down to the nitty gritty with like a Google spreadsheet and numbers. And one of the things that we did that I think can be really helpful for what we're talking about here was take an evaluation of where you are. Where am I with my relationship with money? Not where is my money? Where's my relationship? Is it a 1 or is it a 10? Where's my relationship? And go through, if you're single, it's going to be very different than if, you're married. It's going to be different if you're a parent, not parent, but, where are you spiritually? Where are you? And that can be different for a lot of people, right? Where are you with, in my case, your relationship with herpes? Where are you with that? Is it like not an issue, or is it still an issue in your life right now? And it will go in ebbs and flows. Life is a roller coaster, and that's okay. You don't want it to be steady Eddie. You want the ups and downs because it allows you to learn, it allows you to grow, it allows you to get out of your comfort zone. It allows you to appreciate when you are in the lows, and you can appreciate the highs. And, of course, none of us want to go down to the low. Like, nobody wants that, but it's part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to introduce you to what we're calling the STILL method, STILL.
Tell me,
because it basically encapsulates what we're talking about, and we apply it to money, but it could totally be applied to anywhere else. So the S is for set your sights. That's the hopes, dreams, goals. Remember your vision, your why. Where are you going? Mm-hmm. Then the T is track your in and out. What's been happening lately? What's come in? What's gone out? How are my feelings doing? That kind of thing. Then the I is inspect your progress. Compared to a month ago, how am I doing? Am I moving in the right direction? How is that? Am I not the right direction? Am I moving in the direction I wanted to? Right. And like kind of evaluating that. So not just looking at what's gone in and what's gone out, but actually taking some moments to reflect on it and inspect it. And then the first L is for look for the 1% adjustment. Look for the tiny shift you can make, to change everything overnight, but you can make a 1% little change that can improve your future. And then start living deliberately. Try it out. See how that 1% adjustment works, how it makes you feel. That's the final L, live deliberately. And then you come back 2 weeks, a month later, however often you want to do it. And you just do the same thing over and over again. Set your sights, track your in and out, inspect your progress, look for the 1% adjustment, and then live deliberately.
I love that. I'm going to talk about that in our next support group call because we were in the EOR, and like, again, you have people in their financial EOR phase, and you're like, I will get you there. Today may be hard and you may not see a change this month, but I promise you, if we do these things, I can imagine your mom going, I'm in my late 30s. I don't have a college degree. We're in debt. I'm a mom. How do I start earning an income that will make a shift in my life? And that, I'm sure, was very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah. And it started with a 1% thing of filling out an application. Right. Or maybe even driving to go get the application. Right. Like,
right. Because, who knows back then. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the dangers of the STILL method is getting so into the S, the set your sights, that you forget to do the action to make it happen. And so that's why you have to get all the way to the 2 L's at the end, because it doesn't matter how much you want or dream or set goals. If you don't take the actions to get there, they could still happen, but from my experience, they're a lot less likely.
Absolutely. One of the things that I think will really fit for your community as well, that I teach people, and I actually learned this from finances. So it's interesting. I was in the finance world, the mortgage world, and then I myself was in debt and got through all that. Is, for example, when we're in debt, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay it? How am I going to pay it? How am I going to pay it? And you sit down on your laptop, or you go to work, or whatever you're supposed to do. I can't put gas in my car. I can't buy diapers. I can't. And that's obviously, that's the forefront of your, obviously, like, you're freaking out. It's your livelihood right here. How do I provide?
And it's survival. Yeah.
It's a survival. And the very same thing happens when you're diagnosed with herpes is, oh my gosh, now what? How am I going to date? My dreams were this, I wanted this, da, 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 and I have this, and I had to get that. And what am I going to do? And should I, I have people say, should I end my life, which happens in financial issues as well. And it's like, absolutely not. There is a way out. But what I like to recommend is pick a time. And in the beginning, it might be every single day. Pick a time. Is it 10 a.m.? Is it 2 p.m.? Is it 10 p.m.? Whatever that time is. Is it an hour? Is it half an hour? Is it 5 minutes? But whatever that time is, let's just say 20 minutes. So from 10 to 10:20 every single day, that's when you can worry about money. That's when you can worry about your herpes diagnosis. And you can sit and do all the Google research. You can sit and plan out whatever, all these things. You can actually worry. And when the 10:20 hits, 10:21, you're done. So when those thoughts pop up of, I can't pay my mortgage. Oh my gosh, what happens? What does a bankruptcy look like? You write that down. And then you go, I can worry about that from 10 to 10:20 tomorrow. That's it. And eventually, and that means you may need more time in the beginning, but it may be an hour a day or whatever. But eventually that time will lessen and your brain will go, it's not time for me to worry. It's time for me to actually work. I'm working. I am at work right now to make money. I'm going to go out and I'm going to work on my job application, or I'm going to improve my resume right now. If I'm worrying about a bankruptcy, I'm not working on my resume. That doesn't help my problem. Same thing with herpes, right? So I think that goes really hand in hand.
Yeah.
That's the one thing can you do, because the worry's there. There's always worry.
Yep.
And that's just how we're built, right? Part of us. But how do I get out of it? How do I get out of that? Again, the Eeyore of like, the rain clouds over me.
That's some good advice. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, yours as well. I'm definitely going to use it, because how do we create a process? And that's what we need. That's just the way our brains are built. How do I get step 1, step 2? And nothing that we have talked about here is like something out of the blue different. It's just approaching it differently, and different messages come to us, and we understand messages differently at different times.
Yep. The biggest thing that I think is different about some of the things we're talking about compared with what you hear other places is that we're not saying exactly how much your emergency fund should be, or the exact way to pay off your debt, right? Or how much you should spend on shoes, right? Like that's different for everybody. And it should be different for everybody. We're unique individuals. We don't need cookie cutter solutions. Now there are time tested, pieces of financial wisdom that we can learn and figure out, how does this apply to me today? Our business is called Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. We're trying to tap into those things that have lasted generations. There is something to be said for some of those things, but grandma had a very different emergency fund than we do now, but the importance of an emergency fund, like that's what I'm talking about. And it's probably the same with something like herpes. There's science, there's, medicine that's that has researched and found things. We learn those things, but then we say, okay, now how does this work for me?
Yeah. What's going to work for me in my life, and what am I going to do? And I think kind of at the end of the day, both of us do not want people that are in financial struggles or that are struggling with an STD, STI, to give up. That's not right. I want us to enjoy life, and life can be full of joy, pleasure, excitement, happiness, and you can do everything that you want to do, but you have to make it happen. And here we have it. We can help you. But you have to do it.
Yep. And we have to think, what do we want life to be like in our 70s, 80s, and 90s?
Yeah.
And work backwards from there.
There's a huge STI surge for people in their 70s. Just letting you all know. So people are still enjoying it, still getting it on in their 70s and 80s. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Amanda. Oh my gosh, this was so much fun. I will definitely have your information linked. We'll have grandma's wisdom or wealth wisdom. We'll have that for you guys. You guys can check it out. You have your still method checklist that I was kind of checking it out. So I think as we talked about it today, but I will have that linked for you guys as well. Amanda, what is like a last minute thought, and then where can people locate you?
Yeah. If you go to stillmethod.com, you can get that still method checklist. And what you'll find when you get that checklist is the questions to ask. I'm a big believer that it's more important to find the right questions and let the answers then come as you ask that question and ask it over and over again. So get those questions, allow them to empower you to find the answers that are true for you. I think those questions have a lot of power in them, and then kind of let that guide your life. Look for the right questions rather than always just trying to find the right answer.
That was that, like, I got chills on my right side for that one. I like that. Find the right question. Good one.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. All right, you guys, thanks for joining in. I will see you all in the next episode. And of course, let me know what you guys want to hear. We are here for you. And I am really excited for you guys to reach out to Amanda Neely. Thanks so much, you guys. Bye.